Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. I am your host, Viz, and today we are joined by the star of the upcoming movie Hex, Kayla Adams. Before we get started, Hex is coming out on August 16th to video on demand, digital, and DVD. Be sure to check it out, guys. We're going to be sort of touching on some of the inner aspects of the movie today, but you definitely got to see it to enjoy the full experience. Kayla, thank you so much for being here. How you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to talk to you. Like I told you before we went live, I really enjoyed this film. So let's get right to it. First, I have kind of a silly question. Hex is a thriller horror movie, as skydiving being its background theme. Now, I'm pretty positive, 99% sure, that the skydiving scenes were all done by stunt coordinators. But did you ever get the urge to go up to the director and say, you know what, can I do a jump?
Well, the director had an urge to ask me if I wanted to actually skydive, and I was like, no.
You
I
had
think they were even as a wrap gift, they're like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "No, no, I'm good, thanks."
don't you have a background in stunts? You've done some stunts earlier on in your career.
Yeah, I did a little bit. I mean, nothing compared to like the real seasoned performers out there, many of which are my friends. But yeah, I had a really athletic background, so it was one avenue for my work. It was, a short avenue, and I tip my hat to performers because my God, what they do for
Yeah.
the shot is insane. So yeah, it was fun, short-lived, but takes a lot of energy. And I was like, yeah, I don't really want to break every bone in my body.
I totally agree with you there. Now, the title Hex, when people come across this title, Hex, they're going to assume this is a paranormal movie about a curse or something along those lines. But it's not. Its background theme is about skydiving, and Hex is actually a maneuver done by a group of skydivers. When Hex was described to you, when you got the part, how was it described?
Yeah, so it's kind of like blending the two that you just said together. So it is about a group of skydivers that need a certain amount of skydivers to perform this one very complex jump in the sky, which is called the hex.
Hmm.
And obviously, without giving away too much, because trust me, when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, there were so many twists and turns in it. But this one particular formation, the hex, is a cursed skydive once you've actually done it in the sky.
Hmm.
And so you'll see in the trailer, if anyone's watched the trailer, somebody disappears mid formation and we start to unravel where he went or what happened and who's behind it throughout the whole show.
Yes, and we're going to be sort of getting into that as we go along as well. Now, you play the lead character, Sarah. When you were building Sarah's backstory, what kind of story did you come up as to why Sarah is such a loner?
Mm-hmm. Well, Sarah's and it addresses it in the script, but Sarah's dad was a professional skydiver. So
Hmm.
she was a kid at the drop zone. And it's funny because I actually had a family member who was a big skydiver, and it is at drop zones, it is a family mentality.
Hmm.
People stay there all summer long with their wives and their husbands and their kids. So she was one of those, and her father has passed away.
Hmm.
And so after that, I can relate, like when you go through a loss of someone really significant in your life, you kind of retreat sometimes. And I think that character specifically, she really retreated and it became hard for her to trust anybody, and her journey, her personal journey throughout the film is opening up and trusting people again,
Hmm.
literally trusting, your skydivers, your fellow skydivers with you, but on an emotional level too, is just reopening her heart to relationships and, changes the relationship with her mom in the film. So on a personal level, it's about her opening up again.
Speaking about Sarah's mom, there's a rift between Sarah and her mom. It's very obvious you two are having a conversation, and we sort of get a little hints as to what happened. Sarah's mom mentions she doesn't like how you guys left it. She is sort of taking ownership of her, really overreacting and so on. But when it came to you, into the, again, going to the backstory building and the rift that exists between Sarah and her mom, is the passing of her dad the main fuel that is firing that rift?
Yeah, and I think, I would think most parents, when they find out that, you know, their son or daughter wants to skydive, I think anyone's initial reaction is like, no.
Yeah.
Like mama bear instincts kick in. It's like, no, my daughter's not going to be jumping out of an airplane repeatedly. So, her having the same path as her father, because he was a skydiver as well, and then knowing that he's no longer with us, I would imagine as her character would be really challenging to accept, and that kind of lend hand to me to show that Sarah's a bit of a rebel.
Yeah.
Not everybody doesn't listen to their parents, right? Like a
Hmm.
lot of people actually listen to the guidance of their parents, and Sarah did not.
I wish my
And
3 kids did.
wouldn't that be much easier?
It would, but yes, yes, absolutely.
And a million books on parenting would have never been written if that were the
Yeah,
case.
yeah, definitely true.
Yeah.
So,
So,
now a lot of movies involving skydiving are usually action, Movies like Terminal Velocity come to mind, going back a little ways. What did you think about the writer and director taking the skydiving theme and putting it into a thriller horror environment?
I thought it was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really brilliant, especially because our directors have so much experience skydiving. They have, I think Andy was one of the Red Bull champions at one point. And I'm sorry, Andy, if I got that wrong, but I know he's like really, really good. And our producer, Joe Box, I mean, Joe had been in the stunt world performing stunts. I think his first stunt ever was doubling Leonardo DiCaprio on Titanic,
Wow.
forever ago. And, he's a big coordinator now and produces. So just being able to have such high level of expertise in skydiving and in stunts from our crew perspective
Mm-hmm.
come together felt so safe, so exploratory, and really shows on screen.
I read somewhere that you really like to do a deep dive into each character that you get. Now, when you're doing that with the varying different characters that you have played, let's take Sarah in this instance. What kind of research, how do you deep dive into, like I said, in this case, Sarah? What did you do to get into the mind frame of Sarah?
So every character approach is different because some are really close to you and some are like a huge stretch of your
Hmm.
imagination because they don't seem like they would be any version of yourself. Sarah, I felt some similarities between her and and her backstory was so rich. I got a lot of it from the script, but I created a lot of it on my own and really texturized. Like even when you asked that question about her relationship with her mom, so I have to build 20 plus years that we don't have written on the page in my body.
Yeah.
And so for me, like how I work with my coaches and for even auditions, I'll do a lot of private moments. So I'll just spend time in my body as the character for scenes that are not written in the script.
Yeah.
So there's life in between your scenes, right?
Hmm.
You can fill that up with a real character, a real person, a three-dimensional person. It's funny because my coach always says, our characters are never less interesting than you. They can't just be two-dimensional. They have to
Yeah.
be as complex as we are as human beings. And we're not simple. We're very
No.
complex.
Yeah.
There's so much in the gray area. So for Sarah, it was a lot of backstory. There was a lot of research in skydiving and actual real time like physical practice of how to fold her shoes because there's scenes where I'm folding my chute, I'm packing my bag, but I'm doing it while having like a light conversation.
Yeah.
And that is not something that Kayla even knows how to do because there's a million lines on a parachute. And I'm like trying to do it and look like a pro and have a conversation. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it was it was a lot. But that's the challenge of acting. And that's like the tiniest challenge. There's way bigger out there. So it's just like challenging yourself and showing up and being as authentic to your story and serving your character as possible, and whatever you need to do, whatever research you have to do, like sign me up, I'm down.
Now, Sarah is mentioned throughout the film. She doesn't stay in a place long enough to make friends.
Mm.
Circumstances lead her to come back home to her mom. She does her skydiving solo. She comes across this group led by the character of Payson. Uh, so when Payson is trying to entice you to join the group and you're putting up resistance, going into the acting and with the body motions, there's some banter that is done between you and Payson through dialogue and through body motions. I mean, that particular scene, and I'm talking about the one where you're getting in your car and you're sort of blocking your way. What kind of special things do you do to sort of hint to the audience and to the other character, your character partner, that, yeah, get out of my way, but I am sort of intrigued by this little group that you have going on?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is like, my work on my own is the like you address the physicality and like some of the physical behavior that we had between each other. The more authentic I can be, the more work I do to embody the character, the more behavior comes out through my physical behavior, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Right? So for that scene, it's like, Sarah, obviously there's a chemistry between her and Payson. Sometimes you just meet someone and you don't really know anything about them, but you feel like a little electricity.
hmm,
And for whatever, your trauma or your wound is, and for Sarah, it was her not being able to open up or let
yeah,
people in. You just have to layer in that complexity. Here she is with this guy who she think is quite cute and he's funny and he's witty, but at the same time, her natural instincts is like close off, guard it. So that becomes that inner conflict. And as an actress, for me, like that's how you texture and layer characters having an inner conflict. Because as Kayla, I'm not walking around without conflict. I always have, always have
yeah.
something going on inside of us.
Everybody
So
does, yeah.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So just being able to like ask a lot of questions about my character and Sarah, and like why would she behave that way, and then filling that life up so it feels natural on screen so the audience can feel what's going on without necessarily it being the lines, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as you mentioned earlier, Hex has a lot of layers that get peeled back as the film progresses. As an actor, do you find these type of roles where the story has a lot of twists, turns, layers challenging, and does it keep you on your toes?
It was super challenging. I read the script probably like 70 times. Like and dog-eared and post-it notes, and it would be really funny because at one point I remember the director was talking to an actor about someone in my scene about like they're like no on this scene, and I was like page 42 scene whatever, and they're like I'm like I don't know, I just know it. Like I knew everyone's part throughout the entire script. I was just so well versed in it
Hmm.
because there were so many layers that pulled back. Like horror movies and thrillers have a lot of twists and turns,
Yeah.
and if I'm confused, that's not good. So, so I had to be very, very versed in like where we are, what world we are in, where am I, like just the basic things. But because it's set in a horror film, it's a little bit more complex than a rom-com
Yeah.
where it's like I'm in a cafe and this cute boy and I are on a date.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot
And that's
more. It's a lot more layered than that. Now,
yeah.
going back to Payson, who's played by Matthew Holcomb, by the way, uh, what do you think about what he saw in Sarah that really locked his sights on her?
I think that they both kind of had that lone wolf quality. I obviously can't speak for Matthew and his prep on Payson, but I think that he felt like we both were after something bigger in our lives, and I feel like we had that unspoken connection there. And everyone else, all the other characters are like they're fun and they love to party because there's a lot of partying in between. They're on the drop zone drinking beers and having campfires. And both of those two, I mean, Payson was kind of fun party guy too, but we both had like a seriousness to us
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes you just feel that connection with somebody and you don't know why it is.
Yeah.
So it feels like for me, like Payson had that like unspoken, like there's something similar between the two of us and I don't quite know what it is yet.
I think you guys are both leaders. That was my take.
Oh, yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, you guys are both leaders, like alpha type personalities. Now, there are a lot of fresh faces in this cast between shooting takes and so on. How did you guys get along with each other?
Great. We had so much fun. We had so much fun. We got really close by the end of it. It's a big cast, but for the I mean, Matthew and I actually did a short film together afterwards. He wrote it and a super talented director friend of mine hopped on and we did the film festival route with it and got really great feedback. So like out of that
Nice.
came a really fun working relationship that I never would have expected. But we just got along well. There was no drama, seriously, like no drama. We just enjoyed each other's company, had fun. And honestly, everyone gave 110%. Like
Mm-hmm.
they poured so much into it, which is why I'm so happy it's out or coming out. And I'm so stoked for my directors because I know that this is like their baby.
Yeah,
So yeah, I couldn't be more
absolutely.
proud.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
like less than a week away. Now, there's a wonderful scene that you mentioned earlier on in the interview where a skydiver vanishes in midair. Now, obviously, when you're shooting this, you don't get to see it, but when you saw the final product and how it was put together, what was your take on that scene?
You know, it I didn't know how they were going to do it actually. I had no idea. And
Well, and it happened so quick.
yeah.
One
Yeah.
minute, 1 second he's there, then boom, he's gone, and you're like, "What the hell happened?"
And I think and I could be wrong. I'm not the writer or the director, but I think that that was what they wanted it to be. I don't think that they wanted the disappearance to be like the actual act of the disappearance to be what we're like, what happened? I think everything else where we travel to that explains why it happened or how it happened is
Yeah,
more of the story versus like, I feel like that just had to be something that was like quick. It happened. It left us being like, what? And then now we're on the train and we're going.
absolutely. And as the story unfolds, again, we can't give away any spoilers. And you start interacting more with other members of the group. You start getting close with them. Then there's another woman in the group, Lisa, who sort of sees you as bad luck. Things started to go bad when you joined the group. From the moment you joined, she was just really against you. What is your take on why Lisa disapproved of you? Is it just the woman competitive thing? It's the same for men as well. I'm not, putting women on a separate pedestal, but
Yeah.
did she see you as a threat?
I think her character was definitely threatened. I think in this world, I don't know if it was like a female choice or if it was just that, Sarah had a really good reputation of being a very talented skydiver.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a bit of a hierarchy, right? And
Yeah.
I think she would have maybe felt threatened by that. Also, they had their clique. It was their crew, and your roles in your crew. And then in comes this new person that
Mm-hmm.
people's attention turns to because she's so badass in the sky and mysterious. So I think, naturally anyone's going to be like, well, and, to be kind to Lisa, Sarah wasn't overly friendly off the bat
No,
anyway. So
no,
I
no.
didn't help the situation.
That's right. Sarah's the type of person is this is who I am.
Yeah.
Love me or hate me, whatever. I don't care. And
And she's more happy with you hate her. She's like,
yeah,
that's better, actually.
that makes it easier for her to distance herself. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Kayla, I want to thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your thoughts about this movie. Again, to our audience, the movie is called Hex. It is coming out on digital, on demand, and DVD Tuesday, August 16th. That's next Tuesday. I
Yeah.
highly recommend you guys check it out. Kayla here is the main lead. She's supported by a wonderful cast. And there's just so many layers of this story that we couldn't get into because it would just ruin it. But you are going to be taken on a ride from the very first minute all the way through, literally to the ending. Kayla, thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share before we go?
No, thank you. I just want to say thank you to you for having me on, and I hope everyone enjoys it and has some fun watching it.
Absolutely, I think they will. I want to thank our live audience and those who will be tuning in later on to watch this. Again, on behalf of Kayla Adams and myself, Stay safe and stay walking. Bye, everybody.